logistics industry. The two-day event was hosted by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority with support from the Meridian Port Services Limited. Discussions centered around contributions transport and logistics can make to enhance global supply chain. The participants also gave particular focus on ways to link trade opportunities in the Middle East, Europe, and Africa in contributing towards the economic development in the West African sub-region. During the opening ceremony, the Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Michael Luguje, urged all participants to indulge each other towards providing practical ideas that can help the industry thrive.
The expectation of us in hosting this particular conference is that we'll take the full opportunity to examine the industry and then, at least together, be able to share ideas that can help us move forward as expected. In Ghana, the port sector is evolving. I believe as later on you get to learn from a number of presentations that will be given that we've made quite significant progress and our country is quite resilient in terms of the economy. We are happy about that.
Delivering the keynote address, Minister of Transport, Kuku Furesiama, urged the various players to implement a holistic and strategic response to an enhanced transport connectivity that goes beyond traditional solutions.
Developing a holistic and strategic response for enhanced transport connectivity is thus a necessary requirement, a response that goes beyond the traditional solutions and integrate low emissions and green transport solutions within an overreaching approach. Improving cargo movement through a resilient logistics and supply chain sector whilst enriching customer experience and shaping next generation port industry through technology and automation.
The minister also urged players to work out effective methods to create a resilient transport and logistics sector as well as solve incessant congestions suffered in many ports worldwide.
A lot of ports are facing severe congestions and backlog as a result of the imbalance posed by the uncertainty of the novel COVID-19. Therefore, it is the duty of this conference to come up with the new ways of preparing the ports and lines out logistic chain to meet the exigencies of future challenges.
The Tema Fishing Harbour has been host to a historic ceremony as it witnessed its fair share of the ongoing Queen's Baton Relay taking place in selected places of cultural significance across the country. The activity, similar to the Olympic Torch Relay, is organized before the beginning of the Commonwealth Games. Next year's Games will be held in Birmingham between July and August. The Baton Relay, which began in October 2021, is expected to travel across all 72 nations and territories of the Commonwealth, carrying Queen Elizabeth II's message. It is a symbolic event that signifies unity and sportsmanship among the various participating Commonwealth nations. Speaking to Iron Port, the second Vice President of the Ghana Olympic Committee explained that the fishing harbour was selected due to the social-cultural significance fishing has on the people of Tema traditional area, as well as the economic significance of the port of Tema to the nation.
Tema Harbour is a strategic place. You all understand what the role Tema Harbour is playing in the development of the economy, be it transport, importation of goods, etc.
The chief fisherman who participated in the relay ceremony expressed joy over the experience.
So far, so good. We have a big experience. You know that this one can cover the whole world, and moreover, it can help the name of Ghana to go high. But I think today is historical day. You see, as for me, I've received the baton. It shows a lot because it's a nice day and a good day for people of Ghana.
The Queen's Baton toured Ghana for 3 days. It was first carried from the Jubilee House to the British High Commission, with Ghana's first runner being President Akufo-Addo.
All right, so we are now moving on to the global stage to see some happenings in the port of maritime industry.
On Saturday, October 23, the French Rescue Coordination Center Cross Grisnay organized a rescue for 39 maritime migrants who went into the water in the Strait of Dover. the center had the assistance of 3 Good Samaritan vessels, and working together, they successfully retrieved all survivors with no loss of life. During the day, the center received an alert that a migrant's boat was in difficulty in the strait. Several of the passengers had gone overboard in cold water. Meanwhile, 3 Good Samaritans, the fishing vessel Party de Rien, and 2 merchant ships, the Ako Dike and the Thorn Gallant, responded quickly to the scene. Days before the UN Climate Change Conference is due to begin in Glasgow, leaders from across all sectors of the maritime industry have come together calling on governments and international regulators to take decisive action in support of shipping decarbonization, saying that they recognize the urgency of their efforts and believe that decarbonization is achievable. The shipping industry is collectively asking governments to work together with the industry to deliver the policies and investments needed to reach critical tipping points in decarbonizing global supply chains and the global economy.
So those were some happenings in the port and shipping industry on the global stage. It's now time for us to zoom into our discussion tonight. And tonight we're talking shipping, strictly shipping, and we're taking some perspectives from the Ghana Chamber of Shipping with regards to their, assessment of our performance as a country as far as the shipping industry is concerned. And tonight we are privileged to have in our midst the founder and CEO of Prime Meridian Docks Limited and a member of the Ghana Chamber of Shipping, an executive member of the Ghana Chamber of Shipping. He's in the person of Mr. Stanley Raja Koshi Aholu. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, and welcome.
Thank you very much, Kennedy.
Yes, good to see you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. We are grateful and glad to have you.
Thank you
Thank you for obliging us.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I was with you at the, Intermodal Conference, and you delivered a lecture on behalf of your organization, that's the Ghana Chamber of Shipping. And you raised certain issues which were very pertinent and important with respect to what you think our situation is as a country as far as the shipping industry is concerned. And we thought that you should come and share some of these ones with us, and let's see what the way forward is, where we are at the moment and where we were, and all that. And so let me just find out from you. I know you've done some work, in this regard, particularly if you go back to the 2011s, 2010s, when we started. What was the nature of the ports, and how do you find their performance now?
Yeah, so to talk about that, I mean, this is what we try to articulate at the Intermodal Conference. Yes. But before I even go into answering directly the question you've asked, I think I need to introduce, take some time to introduce the chamber.
Yes.
That I'm representing here today.
Yes.
The Ghana Chamber of Shipping was established in 2018. And the goal, in summary, of the chamber is to essentially articulate and advocate industry, the shipping maritime industry viewpoint or positions to government. And in doing that, to shape policy, legislation for the betterment of the industry. It is noteworthy that the membership of the chamber it's rich with vast industry experience. I mean, the CEO of the chairman of the executive council of the chamber is
former DG
of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. Yes. He's been he was a DG for 8 years. Yes. The current DG is also a member of the chamber.
Right. You're talking of Mr. Ben Osumensa, the former DG. He's the chairman of the executive council.
The executive council, okay. And so that massive experience.
Right. And the current DG, Mr. Michael Luguje, is a member.
Is a member of the chamber.
Okay.
And you also have Dr. Kofi Mbia.
Yes.
Who,
as
you know, is a former CEO of
Ghana Shippers
Authority for several years. I think he can be, the development of the Shippers Authority.
Metamorphosing from Shippers Council
to Shippers Authority can be attributed to him. Yeah. And so that vast experience is also part of the chamber. Then you also have the likes of the former rector of the
Regional Maritime
Regional
University.
Maritime University, Captain Texan.
Yeah, Aaron Texan.
Aaron Texan is also a member of the chamber. You have lawyers who are members of the chamber. You have logistics operators who are members of the chamber. But as I said, so the idea of the chamber, which is essentially from a structural point of view, it's a company, an established company, limited by guarantee, is to advocate industry position and to enable policy and legislative decision-making to be based upon facts.
Okay.
So that's about the chamber.
All right.
And
So,
I'm privileged to be a member of the executive committee.
Right. So in this case, you venture into research areas and you come up with solutions to possible problems that you have identified in the industry.
Absolutely. Research, advocacy, negotiations and discussions on topical issues to bring out the facts. And to get these facts stripped off, all the sentiments, shipping can be quite tantalizing if you strip it off.
Absolutely.
All the sentimentalities and so on and so forth. Right. So the idea is to basically get government and policymakers to look at the bare facts while they're making decisions for the benefit of the industry.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. I recall when the chamber was being launched, I was privileged to host it as MC at the same Marriott Hotel. And, and one fellow you forgot to mention, HRT Ali.
Yes, HRT Ali, who was also
CEO of the dockyard, the Tema shipyard.
Yes, exactly. HRT Ali
is also an
executive member of the chamber. Of the chamber.
Right.
And you have lawyers who have actually worked on our Shipping Act. I just can't quickly recall. I'll get you the name.
Yes,
the one key.
But it's made up
player,
of seasoned professionals and experts who are mostly now consultants.
Exactly.
All right. So let's go down to business.
Yeah. So coming back.
Yes,
to
the transformation of our course, where we were and where we are now.
Now, so a couple of things we need to put.
From the lens of the Ghana Chamber of Shipping.
Yes. Okay, so to summarize, in 2011, let me just use 2011, and I use 2011, go back as far as 2011, because it was at the height of the problems we had at the ports. And when we talk about, and I want to be able to look at this in terms of the maritime industry, and I refer to the maritime industry basically talking about the oceans, the sea, ships, and the carriage of cargo as a result of by means of using the sea and ships. So that broad range of activities we need to put in context. So in 2018, it was pretty bad. I mean, the congestion.
2018. 2011.
2011, sorry. 2011 was pretty bad. The congestion at the port, and Dr. Kofi Mbia delivered a paper on this, and I refer to that copiously as well in my presentation. 2011 was pretty bad, to the point where a task force was formed. The Council of State,
members of Council of State,
were brought in to figure out a solution to the problem of massive congestion, particularly at Tema Port. And the implication, first of all, let's look at the causes of that. It's a demand against supply, a demand for shipping services, the increase in population, the infrastructure is not growing correspondingly with that demand. It's not expanding as it should. And so there has to be a point where it becomes quite jammed up. And so we got there. And ultimately, the impact of that was on the goods you buy in the market. When shippers ship things through, cargo through our supply chain system, through the ports, the goal is that it enters, obviously, in the shops for us to buy, and the cost of that, the impact of that on the economy ultimately. So congestion is not a very good thing for the efficient movement of cargo. And the direct result is the inflation and the expensive nature of those goods when ultimately we buy them. So That was the situation then. And I think gradually, and then also there was the situation where we were not, the ports were not that automated as they are today. And then there's a lot of manual handling of documentation, and the net result is the delay in the processes that ultimately leads to cargo moving through international trade into our local trades supply chain system, and ultimately in our houses and households and in the shops. So that's the impact of that. The cost of all of that on the economy is also something that was quite detrimental. So that's the situation in sum for 2011. But then you also have to put this in the bigger context that from 2010 right down to 2020, something else was happening within the global supply chain system or the maritime system globally. You started to see the formation of alliances between shipping lines, what they refer to as vertical integration, and I will talk about that shortly.
Right.
The direct result of that was that ships were going to be bigger. The maritime industry is largely dependent upon economies of scale. So
the huge volumes you can carry.
Huge volumes you can carry. So the global shipping lines, the major ones, were beginning to form alliances and integrate their services vertically with the local supply chain or the logistics, inland logistics, and terminal operations. And so this was a global context. Now, we have moved significantly from 2011. Today, there has been some significant improvements on our infrastructure as far as shipping is concerned, or the maritime industry is concerned. The MPS terminal is a massive, massive improvement on what was. It's the infrastructure improvement on Tema port. Apparently, we had over $1 billion of investment into building a new terminal, essentially, with depth of about over 16 meters. Technology in terms of handling cargo, gantry cranes, and so on and so forth. And this wasn't the situation then. And so the capacity of the port to handle cargo efficiently has improved significantly as a result of this additional infrastructural improvement. And so that's where we are with the port. And then, of course, if you go to Takoradi Port too, there are significant infrastructural developments going on there. You know that there a new multi-purpose terminal is being built. More significantly, also you have the dry bulk, the bulk terminal is also being built. It's almost completed, I suppose. There's an oil jetty, an oil jetty also being built. So there's expansion there as well. So the infrastructure is improving. All within the context of knowing that our population is increasing. We are an import-dependent country. We're importing tons and tons of cargo. And these have to come through the ports because international trade, basically from which we import most of the things we consume, is about 89% or so seaborne. In other words, cargoes are carried through international trade by means of ships and on the oceans. So essentially, within that broader context, I think that improvement is a very good one, the infrastructural improvement, but a lot more needs to be done. The connectivity in terms of the different modes of transportation. I think there's a backlog of work that needs to be done in terms of connecting rail to the ports. There's the road networks themselves had to be improved. Inland transportation, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the direction as well. Ultimately, the goal of all of this is to enable the ease of cargo movements. And for the chamber, this is what we need to, we are keen on encouraging government to do. Because as you know, whether we like it or not, change is occurring.
Absolutely.
You either be, an agent of that change, or change comes, or change comes upon you. I think that we are in a situation where our goal as a chamber is to alert government to the global changes that are occurring, and to ensure that we are doing more. Another thing also one needs to talk about is digitalization. And automation of the port system and digitalization. The ICOMS, Integrated Customs Management System, one single window customs processing and of documentation. It's also a very laudable move to improve supply chain, because again, money and time is key when we talk about shipping. Where there are delays, money turns on that. And so ultimately the consumer and the economy doesn't benefit. And then also to take out the things that encourage corruption. So if you automate properly and you use modern technology, then I'm sure that we can eliminate some of the bottlenecks or choke points within the supply chain. So I think that the two significant things that the chamber wants to draw attention to as positive and as an indication of where we should be going in terms of expansion of our infrastructure relating to shipping, and also digitalization of the supply chain, to cut down costs and to avoid delays and all the other bottlenecks. These are the two significant things that have happened. And I think that they are improvements on our shipping industry.
Right. Have you taken time as a chamber to examine the causes of congestion? I mean, we've moved from that. You mentioned 2011, the situation is quite different from now. But there are still some of these things that lingers on. Lots of boxes in the ports that have been there for close to 5 years, according to the Shippers Authority. Last time we hosted Mr. Fred Asedu, that one of the managers is in charge of freight at the Ghana Shippers Authority, indicated that there's boxes that are still left in the port uncleared, some lasting up to 5 years. And these are in thousands. And so have you taken your time to examine some of these things and come up with, some solutions to eliminate this situation?
Yes, the problem is not new. I mean, this is partly is the implementation of.
And he mentioned here one of the West corporates is government agencies.
Exactly.
Ministries, departments, and agencies. They bring them. They are not able to clear, and it's like everybody looks on helpless.
Yeah, but they should be sold off. It should be sold off quickly and decongest the port. Sometimes it's as simple as taking action, But again, from the point of view of the chamber. Let me just read out to you some of the causes of congestion that has been in the past identified. Increased cargo throughput. Of course, that's demand on the port.
When we didn't perhaps have the requisite infrastructure
to support it.
That,
Lack of effective planning. The supply chain system, the shipping industry, the supply chain system is supposed to be one of the most, elsewhere it has to be efficiently organized in order for it to actually yield the results it ought to yield. So planning is required. And one of the things that has been identified is effective planning and coordination, which is essentially management. So you can bring that down to management of the services or the infrastructure itself. Complex transaction procedures, So if a process ought to be fairly straightforward, and then you complicate it by allowing, unnecessary number of people to handle the process, instead of automating it and making it bureaucracies, red tape. That's also part of it. Inadequate space for expansion, we've talked about that. Where there's inadequate space for expansion. There's very little you can do about the geography, but you can do much about the technology. You know, the technology to improve the efficiency. It's also extremely important. We talked about the intermodal systems, also important to ease out cargo that's sitting in the port and clogging up space. Incapacity of clearing and forwarding agencies or agents. So the people who are actually operating the systems or manning the process, are they well qualified? Are they up to the job? This is also something that we need to confront.
To look at,
process of exemptions, you know, you're talking about the ministries and governments and whatever. If you have a lot of exemptions, that also has its own
repercussions.
If people don't realize that time and money turns on this, and they don't really take it seriously, and they can leave something that is not incurring, you know, costs or demurrage or whatever expense, additional expense, they will leave it there. And if they don't believe that the consequence of leaving that cargo there for beyond the time it is required to be there is that you forfeit it, they will leave it there. So that's also part of it. Delays in the issuance of documentation, final classification and valuation reports. All of these things together were the causes of congestion. And so, as I said, we are tackling them as a country. I think that we are tackling them. The infrastructure is being improved. Rail is being talked about, and you know, I think that the government is doing a bit more in terms of addressing that aspect of road. Of course, we have to attract investment, and the MPS terminals situation is a good indication of what would happen in the future. It has its pros and cons. You know that. In other words, here you are, you have to attract foreign investment.
Absolutely.
And in attracting foreign investment, sometimes you bring in foreign control. Throughout West Africa, not only in Ghana alone, foreign investment has come into port infrastructure. Massive foreign investment has come into port infrastructure. But that, coming along with that, is also control of port infrastructure or terminals by foreigners. Now, is it a good thing?
I know in some countries they've taken absolute control.
We can look at the numbers. In West Africa, it's happening all over. The key players in most of the terminals in West Africa are Bolloré with APM terminals. You have DP World also doing some things there. You have some others, but essentially, this is what is happening in West Africa. So you attract investment, you expand the port. It comes along with controls. The controls have benefits. Now, the efficiency of MPS and others within the region apparently is improved. Efficiency and productivity by almost 20 to 30%. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. However, the flip side, you also have high cost of operations. Okay, you have high cost of operations. We talked about this at the intermodal
conference.
That, you know, one of the aberrations I say is that yes, we have that improvement in the port infrastructure. Yes, we have that efficiency into the operations of the terminal, especially container shipping. However, you still have a situation where the Port Authority is also operating its own terminal. So there's some kind of competition between the foreign, if you like, the foreign interest terminal and then the Port Authority's terminal. And the Port Authority apparently is not, you know, gaining more in terms of containers coming there. The implication of that, again, there you have it, that the shipper ultimately may not have a choice because then the investment is such that you have to have reserved for that terminal a certain quantum of cargo.
So the element of monopoly?
Yeah, so there's some element of that going in there. I may not necessarily call it monopoly, but you know, there are aspects of monopolistic behavior there. But you know, it is not imposed. It was negotiated. It was an agreement. It comes with the agreement, and so the agreements, agreements in law has to be respected. I mean, generally that's a principle. Pacta sunt servanda. That's the legal principle that agreements ought to be respected or kept. So you can't do very much about that once you've agreed it. I think what you should try and do is ensure that when you are entering into negotiations on agreements with such significant impact on your economy, then you have to do quite a lot in terms of how you deal with that.
Right.
And so there you have it. So then the Port Authority now has to become exercise its role as a
regulator or
landlord, and then allocating where containers should go. But you know, that has a negative implication on ultimately the cost to the shipper. And so these are some of the things that, you know, we need to look at.
Okay. All right. So let's, you also raised issues about charges of shipping lines and, you know, their non-correlation to, as it were, efficiency.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, again, you know, we need to talk about these things within a broader context.
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, we ran the risk of being misunderstood. And from the Chamber's point of view, what you need to look at is the supply chain. And how is Ghana benefiting from the supply chain? That's what you need to look at. Now, we are, as a country, a net importer of shipping services. We are a net importer of shipping services. And UNTAD figures, I have the figures for 2015. They illustrate a very important point, which is this, that the total value of shipping in terms of the services, the total value of imports and exports of shipping services, the total value of imports and exports of shipping services by Ghana in 2015 was over $2 billion. Okay? Over $2 billion.
Wow.
Over $2 billion. Now, we imported almost close to 60-something% of that. In other words, we didn't make money. In other words, we gave money to, out of that 2-point-something billion, we gave almost about 60 or 70% away. Okay? Because we imported the services. What services am I talking about? If you look at the supply chain, if somebody is going to import a container load of ladies' bags into the country, there are a couple of things a person, let's just imagine for a minute that we kind of trace the chain. So you basically find a seller in, say, China. Okay? And you go to your bank and probably take some money from your bank. You have to pay interest on that money. Then you pay the seller some money for the cost of the bags. And then you have to have a freight forwarder in that country arrange the logistics to pick up the bags, put them in a container, track those containers to the port, book space on a liner that is on its way, that has a service to Ghana. That space is booked, the container is put on that ship, it comes to Ghana, right? And then it's discharged by stevedores. And the terminal handles the cargo, It goes to, you go to pay for the duty, get the documentation done, go to the shipping line agency, and have charges paid. You have the cargo cleared. The logistics aspects locally also then take on that cargo and move it to your warehouse or your shop or your house.
Right.
So that's, in summary, that's the chain. So from warehouse of the seller to the warehouse of the receiver, everything that goes in between that is a chain.
Yeah.
And we're saying that the question is, how much of that chain do we derive value from? So if we say, for example, let me give you these numbers. There are quite some very interesting numbers in terms of UNCTAD. So in 2015...
We're talking about the United Nations Commission on Trade and Development,
yes.
UNCTAD, yes.
So this is the market in transport service, shipping transport services for Ghana, 2015, the data. It says the total value in 2015 was 2.318 billion US dollars.
2.318 billion.
US dollars. Okay? We earned out of that, Ghana earned out of that only $457 million.
457.
457. Which is about approximately 20%
of the entire figure.
Market.
Yeah.
Okay? Of the value of the market. And so this is what we need to bear in mind. If we're going to make policy, we're going to criticize a certain aspect of the supply chain, this is what we need to bear in mind, that there's money out there to be made. Yeah. And we control the cargo. We are importing the cargo. We are generating the value down the chain. So how much of that stays with us? And we are saying only basically 20% of the value of the market. Our exports...
And that is not good enough.
It's not good enough. Our exports in transport shipping services are accounting for 24% of the value of our imports. In other words, we import more. In other words, we are giving more of that money, right? We're giving more of that money out to foreigners. In other words, if I took $5,000 to buy cargo and to take it through the chain, we're saying that I only give 24% of that $5,000 to Ghana. The rest goes out.
Yeah.
So we therefore registered a trade balance, in other words, a trade deficit of negative $1.4 billion in 2015. Now, if you think that it can only go up, these figures can only worsen because of the situation.
That's if we don't put our acts together.
Yes, if we don't put our acts together. The data for 2020, I don't have it, but basically this gives you an indication. So therefore, let's bring the question of charges.
Yes.
So the chamber talks about charges in terms of the broader issue of local content for our shipping industry.
Right.
So shipping lines have their agents in Ghana. The expectation is that when you pay freight, you've paid for the transportation of the cargo to delivery point. Thereafter, you expect to pay very little more. In fact, you don't expect to even pay more after the freight you've paid. But we have situation where before you take that cargo out of the port, you have to go back to the shipping line agents and pay some more money. And the point is that, and year on year we've complained, or the shippers have complained about this, and the freight forwarders and clearing agents have been talking about this, that some of the charges that the lines, agents of the lines charge have no correlation to the service provided. It's a commercial thing. So if you're an agent of a line and I paid freight, and expectation for that service is that the cargo should be at destination. But of course I'm going to take it, and you want to have certain charges, then you have to provide additional services in order for me to pay you more. But there are no, in some cases, there are no identifiable services provided for which charges are being extracted from
the shippers.
And so this is the problem we have. Again, it goes back into that whole supply chain thing, that we're paying more for our imports. And the money we pay for our imports, disproportionately, a lot of it is not being retained in country. It's going out. So how then do we appropriate, if you like, a chunk of that supply chain to ourselves, such that we can control it, we can regulate it properly, we can also avoid the monopolistic behavior of players within the market. We can allow for competition and lowering of prices and efficiency of service provision, because competition allows for efficiency of service provision and lowering of prices. How can we do that? We have to identify the chokes within, the rings within the chain and see what areas we have competitive advantage. And then begin to look at those and try and take control of those.
Right. Okay, so when we come back, we're going for a quick break. When we come back, I would find out from you, because the freight forwarders have been, on the back of the shipping lines, because they think that the shipping lines are actually venturing into their territory by setting up local agents, who also ventures into their profession as freight forwarders. And so when we come back, I want to find out whether the chamber has received this complaint and what you have thought about it and what you think should be the right thing to do. This is Metropolitan Television, and the program is Eye on Port, and tonight we are talking shipping, the state of Ghana shipping industry from the perspective of the Ghana Chamber of Shipping. We shall be back right after this break. Please stay.
Every now and again, Goil makes good things happen. This time, Goil has introduced Super XP Ron 95, a higher grade fuel loaded with additives and yet sold at the same price as normal fuel. Goil Super XP Ron 95 enhances engine performance like never before. It maintains the engine by keeping it clean from carbon deposits. Goil Super XP Ron 95 is designed to burn slowly and thus improves fuel economy, making you save money after several kilometers. Goil Super XP Ron 95 gives you a smooth driving experience, that is, less vibrations. Fill up with Goil Super XP Ron 95. Now there's no need to pay more for any higher grade fuel. Goil has that sorted. Goil, good energy.
Electricity, then pay your taxes. Our taxes, our future.
Because you see, without our taxes, we wouldn't have good roads, good schools, better hospitals, street lights, and other very important social amenities. When we pay our taxes, we give our children free and quality education. Talga, my money too small. Why should I pay my tax? Look, small. Salifo, it doesn't matter how small or big your business or income is. You still have to pay your taxes. The little taxes from each and every one of us, when put together, could give your community clean water or that deprived school with tables and chairs. Please pay your taxes. It is your responsibility. It is your civic duty. It is the law.
Impressive factory. If only I had listened to you, I wouldn't have been in this mess. That devastating fire virtually wiped out the whole factory and my warehouse.
Remember my misfortunes last year? Serene Insurance Asset All Risk Fire policy that I took were there to pay for my damaged stocks in the warehouse. And my machines that were affected by the floods have been replaced. My accident vehicle is back on the road thanks to Serene Insurance Motor Policy. Currently, my goods are on the IC, covered with their marine cargo insurance policy. I was just telling Ajima about Serene Insurance.
Oh, Ajima,
tell him more.
As a road contractor, I make sure I do my contractors all risk insurance
for the project, and then workers' compensation for all the workers on site. With Serene Insurance, they will make sure they will cover your unknown tomorrow today.
Serene Insurance, a new face of insurance. Call us now.
All right, so you're welcome back. And let me go straight to our guest once again. Let me say he is Mr. Stanley Raja Koshi Aholu. He is an executive member of the Ghana Chamber of Shipping. He's a maritime lawyer. In fact, he wears so many caps. He's an astute businessman. His business focuses in the shipping industry. That's where his concerns are. And perhaps some other time we'll tell you what they are. But let me find out from you. I believe you would have, heard about the fact that the freight forwarders are up in arms against the shipping lines for venturing into the local freight forwarding business.
Yeah, this is known, but it's not only the trend locally, it's a global trend. And again, the Chamber's concern is that policymakers, decision makers, legislators ought to be aware of what the factual situation is as far as the industry is concerned in order to fashion out solutions. But it cannot just simply be based upon sentiments and other considerations that you cannot really proffer as solutions. So let me put this in its proper context. And if you give me a little time to do that.
Okay,
because
please.
It's a global trend. And the trend has been since 2010 to 2020. This is what we have seen, that shipping lines are forming alliances or what they call vertical integration. And the reason, and I explain, the vertical integration is simply a shipping line taking an interest in terminal operation, at the same time proceeding to take an interest in inland logistics. And the goal is to have the end-to-end service.
Absolutely.
It wants to control the entire chain.
Yeah.
So this has been globally the trend. So it's not peculiar to us. Exactly. And so I'll give you examples. So APM Terminals Maersk.
Yes.
The shipping line is Maersk. Yeah. The terminal is APM Terminals.
Yes.
And I indicated earlier on that throughout West Africa they are present with Bolloré.
Yeah.
And Bolloré is a logistics player, major logistics player in West Africa. So that alliance or that partnership is there. Terminal Investments Limited is also another terminal manager. And MSC, they are together and they are operating within the region. Then you have the likes of HMM, COSCO, Yangming, Marine Transport Corporation. Again, you have that situation. Now, it's not only about the shipping lines doing terminal operations. And then why are they doing this? They want to hedge against freight volatility and also create alternative sources of revenue. These are the two objectives they have. And it's, they're just behaving like businesses that see an opportunity and want to show up their position and to optimize the benefits they can derive from the market. That is a natural behavior. And so you have, in 2020, for example, Maersk acquired a customs brokerage firm and warehousing and distribution services provider, JOC.com. It was in the news. It's big news. So you can see they're going into warehousing, they're going into logistics. You have CMA-CGM, partnership, an online platform that links couriers to online retailers. Then you also have DP World, acquired Lodestar. This is all, this is a trend.
A whole lot of acquisitions. And measures in some cases.
Yeah, exactly. It's integration. They call it vertical integration. So it's not surprising that inland logistics is a target. The partnership for MPS terminal between APM terminal, APM, which is basically Maersk, and Bolloré, and GPHA is a clear indication of that. So it's going to happen. Now, how do we respond to this? How do our governments position themselves to respond to this? You do that through policy, through legislation, and therefore the Chamber has always talked about a comprehensive maritime policy that looks at the entire maritime chain, value chain, and see where we have competitive advantage and protect it. You protect your competitive advantage either through policy or legislation or through incentives for locals. That's the way you do it. It's not. So let me just give you one example of a situation where I think that we should have done something about long ago. If you take Takoradi Port, for example, Takoradi Port hasn't experienced the same levels of or volumes of containers, and therefore the levels of congestion we see in Tema, right? But Takoradi has always been positioned as our export port. Now, we have perennial site of some cargo. In Ghana, we export cocoa. We are now exporting crude, bauxite and manganese.
Yeah.
Now, is it possible that we have a competitive advantage in terms of bulk cargo or bulk shipping? And therefore, we can concentrate our energies in the bulk market, in the acquisition of bulk carriers. Is it possible that Cocoa Board or Cocoa Marketing Company can have a shipping division that acquires bulk carriers and runs them because it controls the cargo? You recall or you know that every year we have to kind of negotiate
the freight rates.
The freight with the shipping lines. We used to do it outside of Ghana, but the last time I hear we did it in Ghana, which is a good thing. So we go to the shipping lines and negotiate freight. They come to us. And I think all the majors were there. In other words, it's good business for them. So is it possible that we can take advantage of that and create some advantage for ourselves within that value chain for operating and running bulk carriers for our manganese, for our bauxite, for our cocoa, and for our liquid bulk. And in doing that, what do? We are creating jobs, right? You have the seafarers. Ghanaian seafarers would have jobs. Our Maritime University, you have training positions. And the income from, running this
will stay in the country.
Will stay in country. So this is what I'm talking about, the value chain. Identifying within that value chain areas where we can have competitive advantage. So we can use incentive packages, we can use legislation, we can use policy. Most recently, we've talked about, I think Ghana Maritime Authority is trying to promote a cabotage legislation to reserve the shipping essentially, the building, the manning, the crewing, the operation of ships within Takoradi and Tema port or within Ghana's waters to Ghanaians. This is something that the Chamber has lauded, but the Chamber has also said that you got to look at this much more broadly within the context of the value chain, within the context of local content, rather than cabotage, strictly speaking.
Right.
Because cabotage, the experiment of cabotage legislation in other places hasn't worked that well. Our neighbors, Nigeria, has experienced, people have talked about this over and over again. But we have an advantage now in that the Africa Free Trade area that we've created has opened up opportunity for short sea shipping. So it is not only going to be, the opportunity is not only going to be for shipping between Takoradi Port and Tema, but all the way across the length of the coastline of either West Africa, Central Africa, name it. So there's an opportunity there for short sea shipping, which means instead of looking at cabotage from a parochial national point of view, we can look at it from a continental or regional point of view and harmonize our laws across the region or the continent and then create a wider market for this.
Right. I'll be going to my text messages quite shortly, pretty shortly, and we shall activate the phone lines as well. But you mentioned a comprehensive maritime strategy, and I guess you know that we have a national, integrated maritime strategy, which was, discussed recently in Koforidua. And tomorrow, they're actually even going to have the implementation, the plan implementation, that's implementation plan validation workshop tomorrow and then Tuesday. Did the Ghana Chamber of Shipping make any inputs into this strategy?
I cannot factually say, but I think that we have participated in.
Absolutely, because I know Dr. Mbia was part of the Ecofredia event.
Yes. So we have. I'm pretty sure that the chamber has been represented one way or another in that process.
Right.
But the views I'm expressing obviously are the
views of the chamber
that they would have been advocating from the vantage point of industry.
Yes. Okay, so let's take some messages now. We have them coming in thick and fast, and there are so many actually. This one says, good evening, please. What steps is the Chamber of Shipping taking to revamp the Black Star Line? This one's from David in Tema.
Well, I mean, the thing about, I think it's just, it's all hacking back on that nostalgia of state-owned, but the trend globally is that states don't run shipping lines, okay? But I've said that if you have parastatals that have a competitive advantage and can have shipping divisions and own their bulk carriers for purposes of cheaper and much more efficient transportation of their bulk cargo, that's something that we can look at. But to hack back on the old days of Black Star Line, I haven't actually, there hasn't been a collective view of the chamber on that. But my personal view is simply that states don't. The trend is that states haven't managed to run quite efficiently. Very complicated and sophisticated operations like running a shipping line.
That's the country.
And just simply because it can be quite complex.
Yes.
Time and money.
Money, yeah, absolutely.
Tends on
Capital
everything.
intensive, yeah.
And, the public service is not necessarily sensitive to time and money, I mean, truth be told.
Yeah.
And so I think that the state can encourage and can create incentives for industry to venture into areas where they have competitive advantage.
Right.
I talked about short sea shipping.
Yeah.
I talked about bulk carriage of exports. And how can we leverage on that advantage? Instead of actually going all the time and asking people to come and carry our cocoa and our manganese. These are bulk cargoes.
Yes.
We can build ship. In fact, it's a matter of security. I mean, at least if you have cocoa marketing, cocoa board, for example, or the cocoa establishment having a shipping division that carries cocoa as a way of exports, that's a way to start.
Absolutely.
The liquid bulk carriage of our crude, of finished product tow, it's not inconceivable that a well-operating tow could have been doing finished products.
Absolutely.
With its own ships.
Sure.
Having a shipping division doesn't necessarily have to acquire them outright. You can charter them.
Right.
And when you do chartering, what you then do is that you create brokerages. You create brokerages that also, the money stays in country. Instead of going to London to get brokers to actually charter vessels for you, you can establish that capacity here locally as well.
Right.
And what about GNPC in terms of offshore vessels? Is there a shipping division that could do a bit more in terms of leveraging that advantage? That's also a possibility.
I think these are ideas you need to share with these institutions you've mentioned and see whether they would buy into, and then perhaps
these are thoughts.
Diversify and invest in there.
These are thoughts.
Absolutely. Very beautiful thoughts indeed. Let me announce that the phone lines are activated at the moment. So the number to dial, as you are aware, is 020-552-8353, 020-552-8353. You can give us a call and contribute to the discussion. My next text message says, please ask him what's happening to the West African shipping. Because since 2000, as I know, shipment within West Africa is very difficult because there is no vessel to ply this section successfully. If you ship cargo to any West African country, it takes months because there's no vessel directly. Well, that's somebody's message. I'll let you respond to that. This one is from Ohima in Tema. She says, I'm just loving the show so much. So much insight. Thank you, Mr. Aholu. I'm sure the Chamber of Shipping would be interested in joining like-minded groups to bring some sanity to the issue of nuisance local charges of the shipping lines. And this one says, good evening, sir. The loss of revenue in value chain, especially in the maritime industry, could be attributed to the loopholes in the system. That is revenue meant for government going into individual pockets. The magnitude of human interference is the greatest bane of the loss in revenue. This one is from David Adu. You take these three, and then there's a lot more.
Yeah, let me start from the last one, the loss of revenue.
Yes.
I wouldn't speak. I'm not the revenue taxman, so I wouldn't speak how. Yeah, I'm sure it's not a perfect situation, and I think we can improve that. But, you know, when we talk about the maritime sector and shipping and then the value chain, we're talking huge sums of money that are not lost simply because we have loopholes. It's just simply the way we transact trade. It's as simple as that. If we are an import-dependent country and you're importing CIF, let's just take the I out of the C, I, and F.
Yeah.
The cost, you know, you don't have competitive advantage over the production of that good. So essentially, you have to buy from somewhere else, and that's just international trade. What about the insurance? Why are you giving the insurance out to some insurance underwriter outside of the country? We could be procuring insurance locally if we were not importing under CIF terms, strictly speaking.
Absolutely.
The freight, again...
I think that's one thing, one policy that the National Insurance Commission is pushing seriously. They want, you know, importers and exporters to procure, you know, insurance locally.
Well, so long as they have the capacity to do so, and so then you streamline your import procedures and the terms under which you encourage your shippers to procure goods from outside or to trade or to import. And so at least in the insurance component, you can, for practical reasons, it's best to actually procure insurance locally. When the goods arrive here and they are damaged or they are short delivered, and it's covered by insurance, you want to have access to the insurance company and the broker that actually to solve that problem and to make a claim. But if your insurance is procured by the seller in his country, and that money is gone there, and he puts his margins on it, and so that's a chunk of your money gone out, which it could have been here. So it's all about the way we import into this country, the processes, the terms under which we do so, we trade. So that's for the revenue bit.
Yes.
And my point and the Chamber's point is that we have to look at this holistically and look at the value chain and try and delineate what competitive advantages we have and then deal with those.
All right. Let's go to the phone lines and welcome Fred from Obuasi onto the show. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Right. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And let me say good evening to Raja. Stanley, his nickname is Raja. We were classmates in school.
Okay.
My issue has to do with the imports and some of the nuances of importation of goods into this country. I'm into the import of spare parts and some other goods. Now, I noticed that when we get to the port at Tema, most of the time, the amount that we pay in terms of duty, sometimes, you know, it's a bit more than how much we pay in terms of the imports, you know. And I've just been wondering, I mean, if we want to position this country in a way that goods are cheaper for people and then also to create jobs, why is it that duty is so expensive? I know this may not be the remit of Stanley, but I mean, because he's in the industry, he probably will have a few ideas as to how we can streamline the import sector to make it more attractive for people to go in and bring in goods that will be of benefit to this country.
Right.
We're talking about the competitive advantage that we have, but at the same time, there are things that we need to import. So how do we position the business in such a way that it will be more attractive and then it will be cost effective to bring in goods? Thank you very much. Raja, say hello to you, and it's been a long time, Raja.
Right.
Thank you,
Yeah,
thank you,
all right.
thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed, Fred from Ubwasi.
Yeah, Fred. The Fred's question, you know, is a very interesting one. And again, let's just expand it. Let's not simply talk about spare parts. Let's expand it. The point is, how do you, and I like the bit where you said, how do you encourage the importation of goods that are of benefit to the country? You know, some studies have shown that in some places or countries, legislation has been used to modify consumer behavior. Let me explain. Of what benefit is importing second-hand clothes into the economy?
Yeah.
Of what benefit is it to import? Let me just stick with the second-hand clothes. And in this day of actually improving the environment and all of that, of what benefit is that? In some situations, legislation and policy is tailored to encourage or to discourage importation of things that are not of significant benefit to the country, to the economy, and also, and in so doing, to encourage local industry.
Okay.
So
to engender
production, because if you are importing more than you're exporting, you're not doing well. You should be exporting and trading and not importing.
Right.
So it's a thing that legislation and policy can handle.
Right. Let's go into the phone lines again. Ato is in Accra. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
Very well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic, and I think that the point is raised that in the shipping industry, the ports only constitute a segment of the whole industry, and that it is high time the government looks beyond just the ports. If you can go into what Stanley has raised, that can really be of immense benefit in terms of revenue for government. So this is a point I want to emphasize on. Sam has really hit it on the nail. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ato. Thank you very much indeed. We are grateful to you for your time. I think it's just
a good point
straightforward.
as well.
Yes.
The value chain.
Yes. All right. So we'll move to other messages. This one says Simon Joe, member of Ghana Chamber of Shipping. He says, to sum up what our council member is saying, there is the need for an integrated maritime transport policy in Ghana to take care of all the issues raised. All right. This one says, hello, may I please ask you to send my contact number to Mr. Stanley Raja Aholu. He has been bringing out subjects that I have always wanted to consult with someone as knowledgeable as him. This one is from Pierre. Well, Pierre, thank you very much indeed. We're grateful to you for your message. He's heard you, and I'm sure he would reach out to you. This one says, good evening, sir. I'm enjoying your show. There's no name attached to this one. And we also have this one here. It says, hi, my name is Kwame. I'm interested to hear, it is interesting to hear your guest touch on some shipping agency fees that are not correlated or that have no correlation with services provided. It is something I have heard a few times on your program. I want to know what some of these services are that are charged but non-existent. All right. One that really comes to mind is container administrative fee or container cleaning fee or something. I mean, that's the common one that they would mention. What are a few practical measures government can do to position the country to either avoid or benefit from the said vertical integration shipping companies are indulging in? My name is Araba.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't stop the global trend. I mean, it's market forces converging, and players within the market doing what they naturally are good at doing, which is optimizing their activities and deriving the best they can from the market, which is a good thing. What that does is that if ultimately it helps the various economies and global trade, then that's fine. But as I said, I mean, from a broader perspective, as a country, what we need to do is to have a clear sense of where the money is. What the value, where is the value?
And go there.
And go there. You know, there's a process. The shipping process has various segments to it. We need to identify where we can most effectively play. And then focus on that through policy, through legislation, through incentive packages, and through capacitation of our locals to take advantage of those segments and derive the most benefit from it. Because that's what we can do. But you can't stop market forces. I mean, you know, we are in this day and age, we're in a global village, if you like. As you know, the international trade cannot be fettered.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's take a look at your position of wanting government to put in place regulation and legislation to influence consumer behavior. I think this was one of the issues you raised. You know.
Yeah. The thing about that is there are things that we are an import-dependent country, like most other. The best position to be is to be producing more. And to be exported more. In other words, we should be trading. We are not trading. And even I talked about the import and export of transport services. If you take a country like Luxembourg, Luxembourg is a very tiny country strip of land, you know, wedged between France, Belgium, and Germany. It doesn't even have a port. But Luxembourg is doing well maritime-wise than we are, several times over. They own ships. We, on our register, I understand, the last I checked, I think we have about 51 registered ships. I don't know what the number is.
Ghanaian owned?
Ghanaian flagged, apparently Ghanaian owned. The condition in which they are, I don't know. But Luxembourg has ships. And in fact, they are trade in shipping services is about 100 times what we are doing.
Wow.
It's because there's a deliberate effort to diversify the economy and to take advantage of the education, the capacity, their position geographically, and so on and so forth. And within the past decade or so, they've done so well with that.
Wow.
We can do it. You know, if we are importing more than we are exporting, as I said, that in itself is not a good thing.
We are import driven, yes.
You're import driven. So what do we do with the situation we have? We need to find ways to retain much more of that money that we're spending to import stuff. And then also we should allow ourselves to be importing into our countries things that are of benefit to the economy. Not things that undermine the economy. Are you with me? So if you're importing second-hand clothes and you're undermining your textile industry, it stands to reason that you have to fashion out policy and fashion out legislation to discourage the importation of second-hand clothes.
Right.
If you're importing spare parts, and therefore you're undermining some local industry in the automobile sector, then you have to design, policy and fashion out legislation to discourage the over-importation of second-hand parts and encourage new parts to come in. What about assembling vehicles and so on and so forth? New parts to come in, or to help locals to begin to manufacture their own parts for the local economy. And that's the way you create jobs, and that's how you build up the economy. So legislation and policy are tools. And if they are strategically targeted, ultimately they would regulate consumer behavior. The question is, if all you have is Ghana-made textiles, and importing Brunei is prohibitively expensive, you may not end up buying the second-hand clothes. You end up buying the Ghana-made clothes. You see what I mean? And that way, then, you are kind of fashioning consumer behavior for the benefit of your economy, I think.
Yes.
And so from a shipping point of view, what I'm saying is that, or what the chamber would want to look at, is a situation where not only do we take advantage of the value chain, but also our governments, we try to encourage government to encourage the importation of material and products that are beneficial to the economy, that add value to the economy, rather than take away from the economy.
Yeah.
And that's another way in which you expend less of your hard-earned foreign exchange in the importation of goods. If what we are stuck with is simply importation rather than production and exports.
Right. All right. Okay, so on the issue of connectivity,
Yes.
for instance, you made mention of the fact that, feeder vessels. I know MB Adobia, used to operate Africa Independent Coastal Services.
Yes, yes.
And you expressed frustration about having had to go to different countries to negotiate, with them, your freights and all that. I mean, how can we be living in such a state?
Yeah, and that's part of the bigger problem that we have on the continent, in the region, that we are not doing enough trade amongst ourselves as countries. And part of the reason we are not trading between ourselves or amongst ourselves is because the efficient means of transporting goods is not really there. We're dependent upon road, and the negativity, the negative aspects of road transport, bringing cargo from Nigeria into Ghana and so on and so forth. And so we are dependent on the shipping lines.
Because some textile made mention of the fact that connecting within West Africa itself is quite difficult.
Exactly. So we are dependent upon the shipping lines, whose business is economy of scale. In other words, the big ships. So if you take, for example, what is happening in West Africa, there are only 4 major ports in West Africa. I think you have Togo, Lomé, you have Abidjan, and then you have Lagos, and then Tema. All the other ports are secondary ports in a sense, because the draft levels are not deep enough, and the cargo handling equipment and so on and so forth are not sophisticated enough to deal with the bigger size vessels that the shipping lines are bringing in. So when you come into one of the major ports that has the capacity to take these bigger ships, then you have to light the containers and then distribute them to the smaller ports. And our business then was to run a feeder service where we take those containers to Freetown, to Monrovia, to Calabar, to some other port within West Africa. Now, but what we discovered, to the detriment of our business, is that the tariffs in each of these ports are fashioned out for the liner shipping service and the bigger lines. And so if you take a smaller feeder vessel and you're running a small operation, then those tariffs won't allow you to stay in business for a very long time. And the regimes in the ports and the laws applying within each port are not harmonized. So if your business is basically to move from one port in one country to the other, then at every twist and turn, you have to confront the hard truth of having to negotiate individually with the ports for tariff adjustments, for concessions, and so on. And that's a very difficult thing to run. But the business is a very good business. And I said, again, that, with the Africa Free Trade area that we have created now, that opens up for short sea shipping, which is what we were doing, or coastal shipping. And what the countries have to do is to harmonize their laws across and preserve coastal shipping and short sea shipping for West Africans, or for Africans, truly speaking, in terms of the businesses. And what you then have to do is to, as I said, either create incentive packages to allow investment in these areas, create regulation to protect them, for their businesses to have time to grow and develop, and also find ways and means of encouraging the reservation of cargoes for them in order for the business. And then, of course, I mean, you can also talk about shipping without finance. Shipping is all about money.
Absolutely.
The entry point for shipping is the threshold is very high. You need loads of money, so you need the banks to also be
millions of dollars.
Be sensitive to these things, and capital to be available to be able to invest in coastal or short sea shipping. Otherwise, we'll continue to talk about intra-African trade without actually achieving any results.
Absolutely. Very well. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Stanley Raja Koshi Aholu. He is an executive member of the Ghana Chamber of Shipping. Tonight we've been discussing the state of Ghana shipping industry, and you heard him. He's raised a lot of valid points, and I think that the powers that be, if they monitored, should take down notes and then perhaps invite the chamber for discussions. And the private companies, that the state agencies you mentioned, GNPC, TOR, and then the rest, if they so want to buy into it, why not? He's available. The chamber is available for you to get there and then discuss and then see how far you can take these suggestions. My name is Kennedy Mon. I would like to say a big thanks once again to our sponsors, Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Ghana Revenue Authority, Goyle Company Limited, Serene Insurance, and Ghana Link Network Services, operators of the Integrated Customs Management System, ICOMS at the ports. We are grateful to you for your time. Remember, the abridged version of the show is aired on Ghana Television on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Make a date and don't miss it. See you again next week, God willing.
Metro TV.